Alright, ladies and gentlemen, today we are doing a UI day, which means I'm going to be showing you how to use layouts and um, various other components to control UI. In particular, we're going to be updating and kind of fixing this particular set of bits. We're going to be upgrading this screen. Let's get right into it. So, first thing, I'm going to go to Projects, Prefabs, Collider Change, which is the player, and this time we're going to open up the Interactable Object menu. Make it visible, go into 2D mode, and well, first thing that we're seeing, this particular window is very disorganized, very cluttered, because you have bits of the HUD and we have the window itself not very well organized. So we could do a temporary disable of the HUD, but I think we should make the HUD disable itself when the Interactable Objects menu is open. To do that, I assume that you have already made a script that is in charge of controlling UI. And if you have, open up that script. And if you have not, simply create a new script named something along the lines of UI controller or inventory controller. In this case, excuse me, I believe I'm going to be using the spell build library, which is the Interactable Objects menu, which is in charge of Interactable Objects menu spell builder, which is this stuff down here. Open up your script by double-clicking on it either in the inspector or in the project search. And one thing, I'm going to point out some stuff for controlling UI elements in particular. So I'm going to open up my inventory controller. When you want to control UI, you're going to have to use this namespace using unityengine.ui. And this will allow you access to different variables such as input fields and images and everything that that's included in this inspector. Any component that is included in a UI element. So the rect transform and the image and the canvas renderer, anything else you put in there, you can only access it once you have the namespace unityengine.ui. And you're probably also going to need it when you're doing the input system stuff, especially if you are planning on having your game use a controller rather than a keyboard to control it. But anyway, back to the main task of this video. We're going to be cleaning this up, and we want, first thing, the HUD to be disabled when the interactable objects menu is open, which means we have to find what opens the interactable objects menu. My guess is that it's going to be in the inventory controller. And so we're going to scroll around, and I'm going to Control F to search for specific terms. Enter. Okay. Okay, Engrave tab. That references this button. When we click this button, Engrave spell, then it'll open up the interactable objects thing, which gives me an idea. A way to shortcut finding what script is in charge of which piece of UI. I'm kind of assuming that you're using somebody else's UI, someone else's setup that maybe you got off the asset store or something. What you can do is you select your button that controls whatever it is you're messing with, and then down here on the onClick event you can find the script that it's connected to. So Open Engrave is connected to the All UI parent, but All UI parent has a bunch of different scripts on it, which means we can go back again, and we're looking inventory controller dot open engrave. So we're looking for something in the inventory controller. Okay, this is a little too specific. We want to find the function that is in charge of the interactable objects. So I suspect that would be under inventory controls. Potentially magic. No. Or would it be UI controls? So we have open inventory. Ah, here we are. Open anvil menu. Okay, let's see. It has another camera that sets active so that it changes the view to look down at the anvil itself. And then it says open weapon upgrade menu, which, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think my game is actually going to have an upgrade menu. So we may potentially delete that. Anyway, we won't worry about it for now though. Keep it open, keep the options open. So I believe somewhere in here we have a bool connected to the inventory controller. Let's see what this is. Go to definition, inventory parent open. Okay, not helpful. So, what we want to do, actually, yeah, what we want to do is when we're opening one of these menus, and specifically on weapon upgrade menu, we want to also turn off, what's the variable called? Do we even have a HUD variable? Weapon tab. Doesn't look like it. Alright, after surveying that script for a little bit, I believe what we're going to want to do is give our inventory controller a reference to the HUD, which is pretty simple. In order to make a reference to something, all you need to do is come to the top, usually, and just say public, in this case game object, because even though it is a UI object, it still falls under the game object category. So we have public game object, and this will be the HUD. Now, we want to find the opening of the, we want to find where it opens the interactable object menu. So open anvil menu. And then we want to set the HUD inactive. So we go HUD dot set active false. And now we come back and make sure that you're in the prefab for your player. And we find where we made the HUD reference right here. And we drag in our HUD parent. Now, we want to figure out where it is that we close our interactable objects menu, because once we do, we want the HUD to turn back on. So I'm going to look for close in Control F. Doesn't look like there's anything, which means it's time to just manually search. I'm going to shrink down all of the big voids so that they're easier to look through. Also, I'm going to add to the open inventory void the HUD set inactive thing. HUD.setActive parentheses false end parentheses, and then whatever that bracket, not a bracket, whatever this thing is that you put at the end is called. Anyway, back to the search for where we close our inventory and where we close our interactable objects menu. We don't need the subtabs. parent, set active false. Hmm. Okay, so it looks like this might be controlled by this boolean right here. So let's see. I believe another way we can check what is in charge of closing the anvil is going to this right here, because when we leave, which is on trigger exit, the inventory or the interactable objects menu closes automatically, which means that we are controlling it using the same script that opens it. Okay, this all makes sense now. So all we need to do is, instead of setting it active to false when we open it, when we open either the parent or the anvil menus, all we do is we move it underneath where it says IPO equals the opposite of IPO. And then we, after we've done that, instead of where it says false, we just say exclamation mark IPO. This means that the HUD setting active will always be opposite, or the inverse, which is what the exclamation mark means, to the interactable object menu parent. So when the menu parent is active, then the HUD is inactive. And when the menu is inactive, then the HUD is active. And I believe we can do the same thing for the inventory. So we just say opposite of IPO. Let's give it a test now. If it works, and we walk up to the anvil, open up our interactable objects menu, then the HUD should automatically turn off. And look at that. It is off. And then when we close it, it turns back on. That's a little weird. Anyway, one more test. We move out of it. Okay. Yep, it's all working as intended. Oh, looks like the roll isn't working. I will add that to the list of things to do later. Now, the next step in our process is to first off probably have engrave spell set to the first option. And under our known words, I think it'd be smarter to have each of our words be in a specific category. And then this is going to need to having the weapon and the item labels outside of the gray box is no bueno. So let us fix that. Alright, so we're going to go to our prefabs, get our player prefab, and I'm going to switch this from project to console so that I can shrink it down really far. And now, when we are in this menu, we can just set the HUD inactive manually. And now we can work on fixing this. So, first thing, let's start from the top left and go to the bottom right, which means we want to swap around this. Now, this is under the buttons game object, and as you can see, it has a horizontal layout group. Having a horizontal layout group is pretty nice because in order to switch engrave spell to the first one, or to be on the left, all we have to do is reorder the children. So we just grab the engrave spell and move it like that. And then the layout group controls all of the sizes and stuff for us, as long as you have control size, child size, width, and height checked. Now, I think what we're going to want next is to adjust our known words area, which I believe is going to be under the word library. So let's see, word library doesn't have any layout groups. Scroll view and label. Okay, it looks like these are just sort of placed in manually. There's nothing that controls each of them. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come up to our word library parent, which means kind of this whole box is the word library. And we're going to add a component called vertical layout group. And it looks like it did something weird. Let's tell it to control the child size. Okay. So now, with these settings check, it forces the two children, which is the scroll view and the label, to both occupy the same amount of space within the parent object, which is the word library. But we don't want it to do that. And it also looks like it forced it to expand sideways for some reason. So, first thing, we want our label to be on top. And we want our word library to what? its width. Yes. Okay. First thing. This is too big. We want this, the label to only take up as much size as the words are in it. In order to make any object within a layout group sort of take up an independent amount that's not like evenly distributed between both objects like the label and the scroll view, what we do is we add a layout component or layout element, and we give it a preferred height. And then here we can manually adjust, not like that, we can manually adjust the height of our label or child component. So in this case, probably 100. Nope, that's too small. Do we have to set it into a negative number? Okay. Looks like that's not how that works. Hmm. As you can see, I made a mistake. Turns out you can only expand your layout element using the layout component. So we're going to remove it from this. And first, before we try messing with this size, or the size of this thing, we are going to make a couple of different scroll views. Not sure how many, but I'll just control duplicate them by pressing Control D, and I'm gonna say 4 is enough. And now on all of these, I'm going to add a component, layout element, and we're gonna say a preferred height. And then we can adjust this between all of them to get what we're looking for. So I say that's a pretty good distribution. The label is pretty small, and these layout elements will be big enough to see the words, at least one row of words or pictures in them. Okay. Now, our word library is a little bit too fat, so we're going to try to shrink it. But unfortunately, it seems to be controlled by yet another layout group, which is the Spell Builder layout. And it has a horizontal layout group, and everything should be kind of distributed evenly. But it seems that for some reason our word library is taking up more space than everything else. Probably has something to do with having a vertical layout group itself. But I don't understand why it would be doing that. Potentially it's because we have, yes, we have yet another layout element right here. So this center area, which is blank, is just an empty image actually. And on it there is a layout element, which means this one kind of ignores what the spell builder horizontal layout group wants. So let's see what happens if we just disable it. Okay, for some reason it makes it worse. So we're gonna increase the amount of space this bad boy takes, and I don't get why this one takes up less space than that one, but an easy way to fix it is to simply give this a layout element as well, and give it a preferred width, increase it until it's about the right distance. Now, one thing we want to do before we move on is go into play mode, and you can see everything's just open at the start. So what we can do is we can do some shrink testing to see if the spacing between these two kind of stays consistent depending on the screen size. And it looks like it does, so I don't think we have anything to worry about there. Go back to your prefab. Now, what do we want to do next? Well, I think that's actually going to be it for today. We have learned about layout groups, and we have used them to adjust our UI, and it's a lot cleaner than it was before. Probably in the next video, I can show you how this all works, where the script automatically puts in words into the word library and puts items into the item library. And to be honest, I think I am going to keep the items and the weapons labels like this, because they sort of just, either that or I'm going to delete them completely. But anyway, that's the end of this video. If you found it helpful, consider subscribing please, and I will hopefully see you next time.